AV Jam. We've got a global audience today, which should be really exciting. I'm pleased to welcome David and Brad from Level 3. Give us a wave, guys. And we've also got Girish from Grantech. Girish. And we've got Mapana from Resurgent. And, of course, you've got Jace, Kev, and I. And today we are talking about global healthcare. And we're going to kick off with a little bit of a hot topic, hopefully, which is the design challenges. And I think that's one for you, David. We've had a little bit of a pre-chat. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the challenges you guys are facing?
Well, thank you for that. So in the U.S., we have some specific challenges that face us in regards to AV. One of the big topics that we have to discuss is about the certification process and bringing AV equipment into the OR setting or just healthcare setting in general. We are forced to go through a certification requirement to actually bring this stuff in and get approved by the FDA, which leaves us kind of in the out of the loop if we have to bring in or introduce new design challenges or new design overall themes to the healthcare field, where we have to go through this process and bring it in, resubmit. And it kind of puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage if we have new or current technology we're bringing in and we need to kind of have to go through the FDA in the certification process.
Okay. And is that, how does that affect you, Brad, alongside David?
It's very frustrating. One of the ways in which, when we first turned to healthcare and thought that that'd be a new division for us, we looked around and saw in our ORs here in the U.S. a lot of analog, very old technology. We got excited because we wanted to upgrade that analog technology into more current digital switchers and so forth. And as we started to do our research and work with the clinical staff, what we found out, what we were coming up against is the reason why they weren't changing this analog equipment was this 510K FDA certification. As we started to do the research, we found out that that is a fairly rigorous process, a rather long process. It requires quite a bit of money in some instances. It helped us explain why we have a lot of old technology in our clinical spaces. And so it can be frustrating because we know we can provide better technology to these spaces, which always improves education and communication and a lot of times the procedure itself. But we have to fight against this 510K certification and submit our systems under that certification in order to be able to provide them to those spaces.
That's clever. I mean, Kev, we've tried to standardise what we have in the UK, our MDT designs, but every NHS trust, from one trust to another trust to another trust, they always do something to change the design. It'll be their imaging devices, the number of displays or something, so that we try and standardise, but each NHS trust wants to mess around with our design. We're sort of being challenged with the opposite, right, Kev?
They do, I think. I mean, the challenge of the certification is definitely a new one, and it sounds like an absolute minefield. Yeah. We don't get that. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do isn't always in kind of the operating room or anything like that. There is still a lot of meeting rooms in the NHS. At that point, the certification, the medical stamp isn't a necessity. But yeah, you go in and think that the way that NHS trust A, B, and C, they're all going to want to achieve the same thing, but no. That is totally different, which means you could go in with a design and think, okay, this is going to fit the bill. Nice, repeatable, simple. This design is going to do X, Y, Z. But yeah, as Jay said, that changes a lot. And where the NHS are with their own platform gives us such a big headache. We can have a trust that is running what they feel is the latest and greatest and everything's running digital, and then we've got other trusts that are still using composite video. Which is just beautiful to put into a design.
How's it for you guys, Girish? Hannah, what do you find?
Yeah, well, it looks like we're going to go back to the floppy disk age. I don't know whether we can get these floppy disks, kind of support and service. But yeah, I completely agree. These kind of service are really a challenge within the healthcare industry. And what we get is that these trends are actually followed from a developed economy towards the developing one. So if something that works in the UK or in the US, and they just tend to take that on and bring it here. So that means it still will be in the analog life with 510K or whatever that is, to get these approvals. And if you go in with the latest devices, digital switching, interfaces and all that, then it's definitely going to be a big challenge, because we still have to go through that process of getting it approved. All they would say is that the headquarter in the UK standard is this, so it has to change from there, right? So that is a big challenge. So yeah, old analog, is a big challenge in terms of putting this together. But I don't know how the new design is going to be accepted, but we all need to work towards it to see how that can be simplified. If there is anything that can be done, I think there is a big chunk of new material and new information that can be used by the healthcare industry.
How innovative are things in India then, Bapana?
So
the standard set by companies like Siemens and GE, whatever standards are set by you guys will be followed here. I don't think we have pretty much any innovation in terms of design for healthcare as such here.
Understood. Are the networks, Brad or David, the hard to access for you guys? We have bespoke healthcare network systems that sometimes are important, sometimes they're not. We never know when they are or are not important to the opportunity.
The networks in the health system for U.S. are kind of a pain at some point. They are very protective of the patient healthcare information, what's going to be HIPAA compliant, what's touching the network, what's not. I mean, rightfully so. Most IT teams have a fair amount of questions for us that we have to overcome when getting into kind of a healthcare or the hospital setting. But it also to that point is that, getting IT, getting a better standard in place so they can understand exactly what the AV side is touching and what it's not touching is important for us. There is some time that is wasted being able to have to go through and explain exactly how this interface is, what it's touching. But it's definitely something we have to overcome and we have to address anytime we're pretty much setting foot into a hospital setting.
Where's your patient record system? How many do you have to contend with?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of patient healthcare. I mean, we have different ones. Some of them would be like Epic off the top of my head. There's a lot of different systems that we have to interface with, but a majority of the time it's just interfacing with the IT teams that then set those rules and standards that we have to either how our systems are going to talk, how much control do we have over those systems, and what information is going to be transmitted over them as well.
So I suppose for you guys, just like us, every different kind of healthcare provider then that you speak to, you're starting the whole thing again. You're starting the process, the same conversations over and over again.
Exactly.
There seems to be no centralized anything where you'd wish for that one size fits all. If you could do it for one, you could do it for all. But it sounds like for you guys, it's the same for us. That's not the case.
Yeah, it's definitely something we have to. It's kind of funny. We have this conversation every single time, and we kind of, laugh in the background and go, "Okay, here we go again." But, they may have a couple new changes or questions for us. But yes, every single time we go into a health system, it's like going to the health system for the first time.
We've even gone to the point of creating, and David, assist me here, but we've created a frequently asked question list so that we can start the conversation by saying, here's all the challenges that we know that you're going to have for not wanting us to come in and install our system. and here's the countless times we've had this conversation, which resulted in every single time being blessed, okay, I guess you guys can come in. Because we have a system that we keep closed we don't want to be part of their system because we're transmitting quite a bit of video bandwidth. So we don't want to interfere with their IT system. We don't want to interfere with their network. We don't want to be any problem whatsoever. Our system remains closed. We have one connection on port 80, I believe, so we can hit the outside world. But it takes sometimes days and weeks to ally those IT teams and make sure that they understand that it's all going to be okay.
I think, yeah. So the patient record system is pretty much very, very confidential for us here. There is information that probably because of lack of awareness that they don't want to share anything in terms of network and all that. And what I know of is that by law, we need to keep these documents for a period of 14 years or something, all the patient records. Okay, so that's a lot of records and a lot of space that's going to occupy. So network is definitely a challenge, similar to what Brad was telling us. Port 80 or whatever, we need to get access to that and get out of that.
Do you have any challenges with tourists then? In the hospitals out there, you must have a lot of visitors being taken into hospital, and issues there then.
Well, yes, it all depends on the insurance or anything that they would have, but generally, if you have a traveler or a tourist, they are covered well within the private hospitals.
Are you saying don't travel to Dubai without insurance then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's like our top travel tip of the day there. Straight in.
Yeah, the private healthcare probably would in those things, but not much of an issue with. But the specialists generally travel either to India or to the western side of the world in terms of healthcare, because that's where you get better doctors, better specialists. So telemed is another big avenue that can actually be utilized in this. But then again, what standards, what it is, those needs to be discovered every time.
So the interesting thing for me here, we've used up some of our time, is we all have the same challenges, despite the fact that we have this isolated little NHS and the US system so different. We have the same challenges. Does anyone want to make any questions or observations before we all go about the rest of our day on this, guys? Anyone want to add anything?
You got millions of things now just filtering through your head. I think, as Giri said, there's so many things that you want to do to be able to. The whole idea, you need to be able to work together and help, and you can get telemedicine to work across the globe. Is that ever really genuinely going to be achieved? That we can all, in any country, help one another out with specialists or anywhere on the planet when our own kind of in-house shops don't stack up anyway?
That's a good point. What I see, especially for the U.S., is that I would love to see some of these organizations kind of take point and lead by example. I think that's the best way, is if we get some of these big healthcare organizations just to say, okay, we're going to go in for it and we're going to go all the way and lead, and then others will follow it, and then we'll start to get those standards put in place. But it's needed. It's definitely needed at this time.
Cool. Well, my view to just wrap it up is if we can't get an NHS trust in Yorkshire to communicate effectively with one in the East Midlands, we're never going to get them talking to you guys in the US or in India and Dubai. So I'm going to stick to my more local pains at the minute in healthcare. You guys carry on enjoying what we're doing. Just to wrap up, I think the one thing we didn't mention at the outset. This is the first time we've done one of these AV Jam episodes with a whole team of PSNI affiliates, and it's great to share some time on one of these AV Jams with you guys. Really enjoyed it. We'll do another one again, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you for having me, Jason and team.
Hakuna Matata, my friend. I love that thing behind your desk. That's brilliant.
That's it. Hakuna Matata.
Cheers.